Hey everyone, head over to patreon.com/heyrob. That's patreon.com/heyrob and sign up so you can take part in my weekly Facebook Live Q&A sessions where I answer your questions about anything from Escape the Fate stuff to advice for being an artist or just things you were always curious about. I will also be doing fan follow-up streams to hear your thoughts about the albums we discuss in the podcast episodes. On the Patreon page, you can also get signed drumsticks, follow backs on social media, and even enter to win grand prizes that I give away every single month. So check it all out at patreon.com/heyrob.
Oh shit!
Holy shit. Is right.
Oh my god, dude, that's intense. I'm so jealous. I wish I could listen to that for the first time. Like we're talking about it and shit, and oh my god, can you imagine?
Music
Like,
is like magic. At its best, it leaves you in awe. It dazzles you. And ultimately makes you wonder how did they come up with that? How did they create it? And how did they execute it physically? How does this all happen? And it makes you smile. And Justice for All to me is magic. I ask all those questions every time I hear it. We're sweating right now because we just listened to Dyer's Eve.
we're air drummed and air guitared.
And that is the headbanging session of a lifetime just now.
Right.
And that song in particular, how did they perform it? So fast, so thrashy. How did they create it? And I can't answer those questions, man. I can't answer those questions. So today we are talking about none other than And Justice for All. So at this point in time, we don't have a name for this podcast, but one of the working titles is, actually, I'm not even going to tell you because in case we don't use it and we want to use it later, fuck it. We can.
And Justice for Albums.
That's right. So welcome to the show. This is where we review all of our favorite albums. Today we're reviewing And Justice for All. So a couple facts before we get into it and talk about how this album shaped our life. And Justice for All was released in 1988, and it was the first record after the death of Cliff Burton and the first to feature Jason Newsted. Sort of. And we'll get into that. It was produced by Master of Puppets and Ride the Lightning producer Flemming Rasmussen. I believe that's how you pronounce it. But Mike Klink, the producer of Appetite for Destruction, is actually credited on 2 songs because they worked with him, but they decided they weren't meshing well together. So that's when they decided to call the guy who had produced the 2 previous records in Flemming. So yeah, there is a lot of controversy with the album's production regarding the bass or lack thereof.
I think this album at the time
Let's have this pointing towards you, though.
Oh, there we go.
We were rocking out pretty hard.
That must get hit. At the time, I think this was the fastest selling album. It went platinum in like a couple weeks.
I don't think it was a couple weeks, which is the next part I'm going to go to is the sales. I couldn't get a definitive album sales figure.
It was number 6 on the top 200.
Mm-hmm. Peaked at number 6.
Well, it did something within a couple weeks. Like sold.
It outsold all their previous material by far.
Was that what it was?
Quickly.
It was. I heard it kind of randomly today. I don't know exactly the exact. We'll have to fact check shit. But yeah, I mean, for its time, and when we get into the album, like for what it is, to be that high.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm just proud of a
Well,
human race.
and that's where I continue down some of these facts is, like you said, it peaked at number 6 on the Billboard charts, and it stayed there for, I believe it was like 83 weeks or something on the Billboard 200, top 200. And in 1989, this is a very controversial, well-known thing. The Grammy Awards introduced a new category for hard rock metal performance, and
Did they win?
they performed. They were the first heavy metal band ever to perform on the Grammys. Typically, if you perform on the Grammys, you win the Grammy. They lost to Jethro Tull, who didn't even bother attending because they didn't even think they were classified as heavy metal. So Metallica lost the first ever heavy metal award to a band with a flute. Not saying I don't like Jethro Tull, but they're not a heavy metal band, and they even were the first ones to say it. So they gave them actually the Grammy Award the following year for Best Metal Performance for One. And One actually was the first song ever by them to feature, to have radio airplay. And it also was their first music video. So like you were saying, for an album, for a song, a 7-minute plus song to be played on radio, and I'm sure there was edits, and for it to have a music video which was as dark as it was, which had all that crazy double bass and shredding and the intensity. There'd never been anything like that on MTV, which was actually still kind of new. There'd never been anything like that on radio, that heavy. So for them to do that was pretty remarkable, which is kind of what you were
And
getting at, right?
their music video, the one that you all know, they released 3 of them, and the one that we all know was actually not. It was kind of like the Plan B. The first Plan A was just a live recording because they didn't think they would actually, the label and MTV and the whole thing would even go for how dark the content was for that time, and it's 7 minutes long of
which actually was 2 released because they have a VHS and I guess DVD, right? I have the VHS. It's called 2 of 1, so it is just them performing in that warehouse or wherever it was, black and white, and then the other one has all the war footage and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, but for an album that intense to have sold as many millions of copies as it has is part of why Metallica continues to be one of my favorite bands, because oftentimes when we're creating and stuff, we think about the scene and what other bands that are like us. Well, if we're to talk about hard rock music, this is as biggest as it's ever been for as hard as it's been. There's been bands that are heavier that haven't been as successful as Metallica, and there's been bands that are more successful than Metallica, only a couple, but weren't as intensely fucking heavy as Metallica. So for them to do what they did is insane, and it led the path there into to writing the Black Album, and that one going forever.
1988. What do you think all the noise around them is telling them to do? Oh, dude, you guys got to blow that hair up. You got to wear tighter pants. You got to do this and this and that. I mean, that was the metal scene that had blown up. It exploded. Metal was pop basically, but it was that glam shit, and they went Beethoven, Mozart with it.
Yeah.
And to think how big it was for how just in depth, and I mean there's so many time signature changes and just so many notes, and it's prog rock. It's one of the first, it's a prog rock metal album, like it really is. Even though if you look at it today, you'd say, oh well, Dream Theater and other bands, but really like for its time, I mean that's pretty much a prog rock record. And to they didn't really steer past what they were doing, but I mean I feel like they grew. I feel like they pushed themselves to the limit of their kind of musicianship. I feel like this is probably their most, I don't know, what would you say? This is probably their most
definitely like you said, progressive. So one of the things we like to do, I just started this podcast, right? But we're talking about the context of what it was like at the time. What was the world like? What was the scene like? You and I were babies when this was released.
I was 3.
So we have no recollection personally at that particular time.
Were you 1?
I was 1, yeah. So, to play off the song One, right? Maybe that's why it went so big, right? But I mean, what was going on in the world back then in terms of society? I mean, you said it. It was a lot of hair metal and that kind of stuff. But there was the Cold War was still going on. It was still very cold, and the wall, I believe, when did it come down? Like
85, I think.
are you sure? I thought it came out like 1990 or something like that.
Was it that late?
I think so. I mean, look at that. We got a podcast. Fuck it. Let's look it up real
We don't
quick.
really go to school too much.
I mean, if this takes too long, we could edit it out. But it looks like 1991. See, I did go to school.
Oh, did it in the 90s?
Yeah, so the Cold War was still going on. You still had that to deal with, and you were, all that kind of stuff. Which this album is a bit political at times, and definitely talks about society. And as most thrash metal albums will do, they prefer to go and talk about the dark side of those types of things, the negativity that goes on. But I don't know a whole lot about it, so I can't really speak too much on that. But what I can speak on is what was happening in the music scene. On one side, you had, like you said, the hair metal bands teasing their hair up even higher and higher, and who can wear even more makeup. And MTV had eaten it up, and at that point, it's full on. It is really taken over. MTV changed it, and that it made it to where that imagery was very important. So I guess you had to be pretty, right, to be able to sell records back then. But you had the edge of being the guitar solo, shredding and high vocals, and then partying afterwards, right? So that's what was going on. And meanwhile, bands like Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, Anthrax, they took the opposite approach. They said, fuck that, let's be heavy. Let's go even heavier. And with each passing album, the records got more and more progressive, whereas Kill 'Em All was straight thrash, 4-minute songs, just fast as hell. And then it goes into Ride the Lightning. Some of the songs become more ambitious and epic and longer. And Master of Puppets is a masterpiece. And then they lose Cliff Burton. And then you go from that, and you have to go through that grieving process. But they continued on this progressive journey. I believed it was like from the fastest, hardest music into now the most intricate and technical music. And that peaked at And Justice for All, because obviously from there.
And arguably the most heavy.
Yeah.
That album is just a wall of sound and just in your face. It's more chuggy, I feel, probably than anything prior.
I agree with that, actually. And so, and the album or the band themselves I think they kind of look back on that album not as highly as we do. This is your personal favorite, right?
This is the GOAT.
This is a GOAT for you, and I want to argue with you, but listening today, I'm like, this might be the fucking GOAT, man. So
another thing to why we're still on this edge of things, so they do talk about a war and different things like that, and they're talking about loss, but they are mourning. This is like because they're so big at that time, they're touring nonstop, and then they have to break off tour. I watched some today where they're talking about flying in helicopters to do parts. I'm like, wow, it's fucking pretty rock starish.
Yeah.
And at that same time, they're still dealing with the loss of not just, this bass monster too, but probably one of is their brother, their best friends. That all they have is their band. That's their family, and then they got Jason Newsted and having to deal with a new guy, and the whole thing. And the most controversial part of this whole album is the bass, which we'll get to. But just the mindset of where they have to be, and when you read the lyrics and everything, it's not about gaining, it's about losing, and that's kind of seems to be the theme.
And also like to couple that, also what they're dealing with, that tragedy still. They're still in mourning. They're in their early 20s, man. These guys are like 22, maybe 23 years old. So they're not necessarily in their best mindset of knowing how to deal with something like that. So at that time, what do? You just get wasted, and you heckle a new guy, and you kind of do the whole, initiation fraternity style routine, and they roasted Jason Newsted and broke him in, and they didn't want him to think, yo, you're in, you made it, and we're a successful band. We all just bought houses and we have a gold record, and we're about to go make this huge record. Like, nah, like you got to earn your spot, and that to them it seemed how it was gonna go. But when we could talk about the bass actually, because the bass seems to be missing. Jason Newsted doesn't actually have hard feelings. We were watching the same interviews this past couple days regarding that, and I don't think he has those hard feelings, dude. I think he's like just kind of, it's like it is what it is, and it turned out the way it did, and it was successful. So
let me ask you. So we have two schools of thoughts here, and who knows? But the two legendary stories, which we love, Rockstar legendary stories. I'll ask you what you think it is. We either have A is sonically, Jason and Lars. James and Lars just preferred to have the bass out of the mix because it followed the rhythm guitar so closely. They even famously told the mixer, turn it down so it just can be heard, and then turn it down 3 more decibels. They really wanted to bury it, and I really like the tone, and the tone's very, very unique. I don't think there's anything I was thinking about today that's just quite as just it's so like it's just guitar. It's just in your face and so heavy. And why is that? Well, your ears are just following that, and they're not being conflicted. Or the other school of thought, were they just trying to say, you know what, fuck you, you can't be on our album yet, you gotta earn it? Because a lot of people think that.
I think and you're in the light right here for the video, so try to be right there. Yeah, it actually does make it look better, which is crazy.
I look like touched by an angel.
For people that are only listening to this, they don't know what's going on, but we're trying to make the video quality good too for YouTube. But I don't think that that's the case. I don't think Lars, who came in, and we were watching the interview today on Loudwire, you can go check it out, where they're talking to the mixer, and Lars was like, nah, dude, my drum tones, and he wanted that kick to like really stick out. And if you listen to records before that, up to then, that is the punchiest bass drum that ever existed up until that point, until Vinnie Paul and Pantera came along, and then from then on, every metal band had that bass drum louder than anything else in the mix. But that was the first one that ever really did it that way, and I don't think they would sabotage themselves to prove a point. You know what I mean? I don't think that they would say, fuck you, Jason, our record will sound like shit, to spite you,
And
like
if you know about mixing and recording, you can only have one. Only the bass kick or the bass will win in the mix. So it kind of depends on the style and whatnot, but only one can be louder, and that's where your ears will be drawn to. So I think Lars now didn't have to deal with a Cliff bass monster. He's like, fuck it, my bass drum is the most.
But it's also because you said it is the style. This record, Master of Puppets had crazy shredding on certain songs, but the rhythms were the tempos were a little slower. Just
right.
And the rhythms weren't quite as intricate as this, where these had the single note patterns, the shredding, open E into the weird little notes, and all. There was so many intricate things that the bass feels like it would muddy it up, So I believe that it was probably more something like that. Which, to your credit, I agree with you. It created a unique tone. Like as soon as you hear the beginning, that note of Blackened with the reverse guitar, coming in, those harmonies, it sounds like the theme and Justice for All. This weird American patriotic or anti-patriotic, whatever it is, right? It sounds like we're listening to like the Star Spangled Banner, but like the national anthem of like hell. You know what I mean? Like it's so sick, and that's how it starts, and then the whole vibe goes into that, and I love it. But enough about the mix. Let's go back to the beginning, though. You became a Metallica fan much different than I did. I grew up from 4 years old. I already knew almost the whole Black Album before I started school, for sure. But you came in later. Where does Justice fit in? How did you become a fan? What were your first impressions? Eddie and I spoke about American Idiot. He talked about how much he didn't like it, but only this week did he grow to like it. What was Injustice for All for you when you first heard it?
Kind of in a nutshell, the first Metallica I heard was from kids at school talking about how awesome Metallica was. And I had not heard them, and I was kind of late to the music party. I didn't really get into music until, I like classical stuff, but when I was a kid, not until like late junior high. So maybe like 12 or 13 even. And kids were always talking to Metallica's so sick. And it came out, I remember they were talking about their new CD came out, and they were talking about Metallica, and one day I just happened to turn on the rock and roll station while my Mormon mother was in the store, and I could change the channel, and on came something from Reload, I don't remember what, and I heard his voice, and I thought, if there's a band called Metallica, this has to be it. This is fucking heavy. And sure enough, that was, whatever, by Metallica. And I was like, oh my God, that's insane. So from then on, all my mowing lawn money went to Metallica. And I started at the beginning. I remember my cool uncle bought Kill 'Em All for me. And my parents didn't know about it. And it was from Reload to hearing Kill 'Em All, very different. Mm-hmm. And it took me a minute to like I liked it, but it was like it was the first time I heard thrash.
Yeah.
And then I got Reload, and I was like, oh, this is what I was talking about. And then Master Puppets, and I loved Master, but I think at the time it still didn't connect with me. It connected with me, and then I got Injustice for All, and I remember that because that's exactly when I got my first like Walkman, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I remember taking it to school and listening to it all day, and I remember like just being in like art class and hearing like Frieden's Insanity or whatever, and just the feeling, not even like the songs, but the like when you first hear an album for the first time, that moment sticks with you forever. And so I remember just drawing and like having like this just mountain of electric guitars, this wall of sound, just like just pulsating hypnotic waves, just like that. So that was just overwhelming to me, unlike anything I'd heard from Metallica prior or after. I hadn't even gotten to Load and Reload because I wanted to do it in order, and I just fell in love with it from then on. And that's just always been the GOAT. I mean, you get away from it just like you do every album, but you come back to that one and you're just like, I mean, we were talking about doing this, right?
Yeah.
Other day, you text me at 5 a.m?
Yeah.
I'm walking out to my car, and I'm walking like this. Like, I mean, fuck, it sucks waking up at 5, guys. When you're 30, you'll see. And I'm like sitting in my car, and I put it on, and it's doing that beautiful, like you're saying, that intro. And I'm driving out of my place, and then it's just like, dun, 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 dun. And I'm like, fuck, yeah. And I'm just hitting it on 100. That's probably why I broke my car. Like, I don't give a fuck. I'm just fucking in it. You know what I mean? Like, oh, yeah. And I'm like a fucking 15-year-old all of a sudden.
Yep.
Like it just like you're saying, the magic of it. There's some bands. I play guitar, you play drums. You've learned a lot of your artists. I don't want to learn the magic. I don't want to know how you did the trick.
Yeah.
I just want to know that that's my card. I'm just impressed that that's your card. I know how to do magic too, but I don't want to know your trick because it's just fucking unbelievable to just have that. I need to push play to get your magic.
And for me, and well, just to go off what you said though, knowing Jordan's mom, yeah, this was off limits. It was not okay in the Lee household at all. But for me though, it was the contrary. My folks were rock and roll fans. They became fans of Metallica when they went to go watch Guns N' Roses when they were touring together in Las Cruces, the NMSU freaking whatever stadium, and they went to go watch Guns N' Roses. They came back as Metallica fans, and that was when James Hetfield had his arm burned too. And they're like, dude, this band is so gnarly, and we would bump it every day.
So they were Guns N' Roses fans before
Yes.
They got into wow.
Yeah, because Metallica, even though they were getting that recognition on radio and MTV and stuff, they still weren't quite that of a mainstream artist yet
I could see that.
until the Black Album. And it was, a lot of it had to do with that tour. A lot of it had to do with the fact that their songs could actually fit in a radio format, and so they became those fans, and I was obsessed. I was obsessed with Guns N' Roses. I was obsessed with Metallica. I'm still obsessed with those bands. But at that time, gosh, I wish I could go back. Like you said, I wish I could go back and listen for the first time to And Justice for All. I'm going to say it too. Maybe it's because I just been listening. It's the GOAT for me. The Black Album's close, but it doesn't give me that same magic where you've shown, like, you asked me to pick a card, I picked the card, you show me the deck, you show me it's a real deck, it exists, but I mean, dude, I've been playing drums for 20 years, I still can't play this shit, dude. I still can't figure the intro to Blacken, and I fucking try, like, just like that timing, it's so weird, and it's still mesmerizing to me. But if I could put myself back in that place, I mean, you've met my cousin Josh. He was the cool guy because he played guitar. His dad played guitar. He was a little bit older than me, not so much older that he was like an uncle, but he was just like the older brother type, and everything he did was cool, and he was a metalhead, and we got obsessed with this band. And Justice for All is the first album I actually ever owned. He gave me the copy of it on CD or tape or whatever. It was on tape, and because my aunt actually bought me a copy for Christmas, and I told her, hey, I already have it. So we took it back to Walmart and got a new one, like probably Puppets or something, right? And yeah, man, that album it blew my mind. It really did, and the songs were so long, and back then it was just kind of matter of fact, like, this is the greatest band. There's no other opinions, like, this is the best band. It's just like, oh, there they are, this is it, they're the GOAT, cool. And that's how I've looked at them my whole life. They're on such another pedestal, and Justice for All just takes everything to the limit that they possibly could. And although I do love a lot of songs more than some of the songs that are on Injustice for All, I think as a whole piece, it really, really is that magical, man. So let's transition over then to, some of our standout tracks, which will also bleed into the things that have aged the best and the worst. So what are your standout tracks, like the 2 or 3 that are like, damn, that really defines it?
For that, I just need to look real quick.
Oh, you actually got notes. All right, you came to work.
No, I just need to see the album just to kind of like I don't want to leave anything out on the table, Hey, real quick while I'm looking this up, let me ask you, because one matter of fact that I could not find, and the mixer said there's so many tracks, if he took it apart, the whole tape or whatever, because they did it on reels, which, holy shit, they did that on reels?
Yeah.
Like, it would fall apart and collapse. How many guitar tracks do you think they ended up using, like rhythm guitars?
I don't know.
Was it, I mean, it's definitely not 2.
No, it's definitely
layered. Is it
layered.
4? Is it 8? Like, it's so layered. But here's the thing is, they play it so fucking precise that, yeah, you have that overflow. But even still, like, just as heavy as it is, it has to be overdubbed. And for them to play it that tight so it doesn't sound muddy, because it's all rhythm.
Yeah.
And it's not just like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many quick notes.
It is odd because, I mean, despite the complexity of the compositions, the fact that these songs aren't just straight verse chorus, it's like, intro into second intro into third, fourth intro.
What a nightmare track in rhythm guitars.
Into verse, into chorus, into re-intro, and then like we're gonna do a whole bridge that's like an entire journey in a different tempo and key.
Let's just say you're James and you played it perfect every fucking time, which you know didn't happen. And you're doing it like 8 times or 4 right, 4 left or whatever the.
Still gonna be like,
Oh my, that's like
and it's not muddy. Like it's still tight.
right. That's
There
what I'm
are
saying. They
the
played
only
it so
times where
clean.
it sounds kind of muddy is when they go into those beautiful, like, you know, the kind of harmony guitar leads where they still layer the rhythm underneath, and but that creates this wall of beauty that doesn't
They use
even
a
sound.
lot of reverb and stuff.
Yeah, there it's just like, I don't know, man. It's who knows. But
So I'm gonna
yeah, what are
say
your
my
standout tracks?
standouts. And over time, they've gotten a little better. Obviously, Blackened. I mean, it's just the best first song I think you could ever have on an album.
I agree.
I mean, just
Battery's close,
right
but I
there.
agree.
It's so beautiful. And then like, here's the roller coaster, you know. And then Justice for All, like it got that as a kid, I didn't really like it as much. It's a little groovy. It's kind of dad rock, but as you get older, those grooves are actually really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's intricate, so it still has it's like that half classical, half, you know, groove shit. Eye of the Beholder, fucking love Eye of the Beholder. That's probably one of my favorite songs in the entire album, and that's the one that reminds me of art class so much. And I know it has that but it's
no, that's Freight Ends of Sanity.
no. Well, okay, but no, this is who I'm thinking of. Yeah. I'm thinking of Eye of the Beholder. It doesn't have the intro, but Eye of the Beholder is the one I'm still thinking of. That's just like, to me, just has like this. It puts you in a world. It just has like that, like you're surrounded, with those hypnotic guitar riffs. One, obviously,
It was the inaugural
in our bracket,
champion
it was the
of
one.
our bracket. One defeated Enter
Now,
Sandman.
is one a daily bump? No, it's an Odyssey. It's a one twice a year.
Watching one live is like, at the end of it, you're like, my God, like they did it. like you're like, wow, I can't believe. Like we went on the journey. Like, how are they doing this right now? This is crazy, man.
And then there was Silence, kind of thing, right? It's just like like a big Odyssey adventure. Shortest Straws, catchy, good. Harvester of Sorrow and Freight Ends of Sanity are kind of all meshed together. Those are probably my, not skips, but they're definitely not my all-time greats.
Yeah.
But then To Live Is to Die is just like, it's transcending. It's so fucking beautiful and groovy and tough and heavy, and just like right when you get into a classical part, they just pump it out again. And then it's sad. It's dark because
Do you understand what that song is?
Well, I know Cliff, the first one, he said a few words. You should read them and kind of go through that. And then Dyer's Eve, that
I already know what it is. Up until that point, Metallica had every record put out an instrumental. Although this one, does it qualify as an instrumental? It's an instrumental, right? It has a spoken word, and I do know all those. You know, when a man lies,
we're gonna get into that because that actually is gonna be. But that's Cliff's last written song that he wrote based on. So it's really.
But what it is it's actually a compilation. It's actually a compilation of all these riffs that Cliff had written that they had not used yet before he died.
And they put them together.
And they kind of pieced it together as a song, as a lasting homage to him, in essence.
Wow.
Now, truthfully, I've heard this multiple times, but I haven't actually ever seen an interview or kind of that 100% if that's an actual fact. But I 100% know he wrote that beginning acoustic thing, or 99% anyway.
And then I'll tell you, because you know my parents and whatnot, and my dad likes Megadeth and stuff now. I think out of principle he doesn't like Metallica, but anyways, long story short is Dyer's Eve has a line in here for you kids and your parents that basically
I can pull them up for you.
It's about dear mother, dear father. Every thought you think I disapprove, curator, dearator, always censoring my every move. Children are seen but not here, tear out everything inspired. So at first it's just kind of like you're raging against your parents and you're just kind of like that rebellion. I mean, you know,
Let's
that's
just
what
let's
it
just
is.
read them. Let's just read them. I got them right here in front of me.
Okay, let's read this.
Dear mother, dear father, what is this hell you have put me through? Believer, deceiver, day in, day out, live my life through you. Push onto me what's wrong or right, hidden from this thing that they call life. And I'm glad you're gonna segue into me, and I'll probably go on a backwards journey on the album, because this song is my favorite Metallica song. This one is probably one of my top 5 songs in life. For one, we've talked extensively about the fucking riffage and the double bass. This is why I play drums. It's because of this song. This is the song that made me go, I need to be a drummer. And then my dad's friend came over. They practiced, and I was fixated on the drummer to see if he could do stuff like this. And gosh, dude, this is the drums, right? But now, you know, when I was asking you earlier, what's aged the best? When I look at my life, and like you're saying with your parents, as we read through these lyrics, we understand some of the things that are wrong with us, right? Dear mother, dear father, every thought I think you disapprove, curator, dictator, always censoring my every move. Children are seen but are not heard, tear out everything inspired. So that right there is basically, to be honest, that sounds like me as a teenager. We're just like angry at our parents because they don't let us do anything, right? Especially knowing where you come from. My parents were similar. They were strict, not as strict as yours, you know, but they were pretty strict, and they would kind of hold us back and not allow us. Now that I have children, I understand that mindset.
So tear out everything inspired.
No.
So what he's getting out is that right there in front, he's saying, you're just telling me what I can and cannot say, and you're stifling my creativity because I have a lot to say, even though I'm young. But your parents don't want you to say because they know you're dumb.
Yeah.
But you still have a lot to say, but they do know a little bit better, or they think they do. And just like, you know, as a parent, both of us, you know, we kind of see the writing on the wall. We know what our kids are probably going to end up evolving to thought-wise.
And the chorus, I've never really actually looked at it this way, which is a very short chorus. Innocence torn from me without your shelter, barred reality, I'm living blindly. So those are actually two opposing thoughts right there. Because the first line, innocence torn from me without your shelter, is saying that when I'm away from you, now he's writing this from the adult standpoint, which is what I saw. There was a moment, and I'll never forget, I was in Orange County. We were listening to this record, and there was a moment where it clicked as an adult what this was talking about. And this song has aged the best lyrically for me because now I appreciate everything my parents did for me, because I was kind of like that too. Like, I trust my parents. I wasn't a bad kid or anything, and they weren't they were great parents. I was fortunate enough to have a family that took care of me, but at the same time, I wondered why they would hold me back on some things. Once I was out taking care of myself, the world fell apart for me, and you as well, where we both kind of went on this downward spiral. Depression, anxiety, all those things. And that's life once I didn't have my parents' shelter, and that was crazy. But then he goes back to the line of barred reality, I'm living blindly, because that's your parents trying to shelter you from the real world because it's fucking scary out there. And so then we move on into the third verse right here. Dear mother, dear father, time has frozen still. What's left to be? Hear nothing, say nothing. Cannot face the fact, I think for me, no guarantee, it's life as is, but damn you for not giving my chance. Kind of just more of the same thing, right? And he's saying, dear mother, dear father, you clipped my wings before I learned to fly, unspoiled, unspoken, I've outgrown that fucking lullaby.
That one was sick.
Oh yeah, and because he cussed too. And
Metallica
doesn't.
Yeah.
They don't cuss a lot, but when you heard him say that F word,
Just
you're like,
hits it like that
like,
fucking lullaby.
Same thing I've always heard from you. Do as I say, not as I do. And we don't understand that growing up. We don't really get that until we really you're there now. And we're both there now. We were parents ourselves, and you got to look after your kids because they don't know what they're doing. And it's frustrating growing up. You're like, why am I not able to do these things? Why you continue? And my dad would be drunk telling me, son, you can't drink until you're an adult. I'm like, why? And now, I mean, I hope my children never drink because look at all the stupid things you do and all the chances you take when you're that way, and that's that part right there. I've outgrown that fucking lullaby, right? Just
Oh, there's one more.
so gnarly. But then we get to this is a part where it turns it around. And you remember Jeremy?
Yeah.
Dude, and he actually became an amazing shredding bass player. He pointed this part out to me because he had extremely strict parents as well. And so we go towards the end. It says, I'm in hell without you. Cannot cope without you two. Shocked at the world that I see. Innocent victim, please rescue me. Insane. Dear mother, dear father, hidden in your world you've made for me. I'm seething, I'm bleeding. Ripping wounds in me that never heal. Undying spite I feel for you. Living out this hell you always knew. What do
He's
you take
mad
away
at
from
his
that?
parents for telling him that their world is tough, but he didn't tell him how tough it is. And that's kind of what you have to do as a parent is you have to find that balance of sheltering them and letting them get a taste of the world because there's nothing harsher, and every young adult knows, than when you first get out on your own and you got to pay rent and you got to pay things and you're working, washing dishes or whatever you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
Even now, like, I mean, you're doing your job and doing my job. You always look at your parents. Wait, what are I going to listen to you? You're just doing this or doing that, or everyone. It's like, well, there's food on the table or whatever the case. Like, it's a struggle. It's just even though we're American and whatnot. I mean, it's still whatever you do. It's a very committed lifestyle to keep doing it so you can raise your family. And if your parents are not only doing it for you, the work that needs to be done financially, but they're also caring enough to try to block you and censor you and make boundaries and bubble wrap you a little bit. I mean, that's love. That's a form of love. I mean, it's people, you're going to take it wrong as a kid. You're going to think it's slavery.
Which I think at that point, uh, if he were to look at himself now at that point of his life, he probably understood it. You know what I mean? And he probably thinks to himself, man, like, I wish it would have sheltered me more, maybe. But that's the fine line, though. What is too much shelter? And that is something that I talk about with family members of mine, when talking about our kids and stuff. Like, what is the right dose of reality for children? What is, oh, you can't listen to this music, you can't do this, you can't do that. As a Christian myself, there's a lot of things that I don't like to put into my mind in my life, and that makes me think like, oh no, this is evil, this is pure evil, this shouldn't exist. But then at its purest, dude, music is, you're just sharing your life, you're sharing your thoughts. So to me, I never wanted to censor Escape the Fate's music, because I wanted it to be, honest from my perspective of what I was feeling at the time and all that. And yeah, some of it's negative. Like I talk about Slayer and their lyrics, and they use scripture to talk about that stuff. And it's evil, but they're just keeping it real. They're focusing on the negative, but they're keeping it real. And with this, it's kind of hard, like when you read these lyrics, because it is confusing to figure out what is that right amount of censorship when someone's taking care of you, when they're your parents, they're sheltering you. You don't want your kids to go too far out into the street lest they get hit by a car, but you can't keep them inside in a bubble either. They have to be prepared for once they are on their own, once they are out and about, they'll know how to cope with those things, and it is a scary, like, I compare it sometimes when I'm lifting weights. I gotta put heavier weight to get stronger, but if I put too much, I can hurt myself. So that's where it's probably confusing for him. He's looking at his life and blaming his parents for
Tough,
that.
man. I'm
You know what I mean?
definitely a stove burner. My son is a stove burner, and I'm just like the
A
guy.
stove burner?
Yeah, like you tell
What
me
is
that
that?
stove's really hot. It's not very hot. Holy okay, it's fucking hot.
Yeah.
You know, like that's me.
Yeah.
It's how Lennon is. It's just one of those things. You just kind of like, well, sometimes I just let him fall. I let him kind of, I'm not gonna let him like really hurt himself, but I don't know. You got to find that balance. But it's really cool that we're talking about Daddy Hetfield here giving us life advice on a thrash album,
Exactly.
and you're talking like this is in the in. Let's not downplay it. It's not a thrash album. It's a fucking amazing piece of music that's very, very, very thought out and intricate. When you're flying in helicopters for bits and pieces off tour, and you're able to come up with this kind of composition is just like mind blowing. But I mean, damn! Look how
You know
much
what?
thought we're doing off one song.
And that's why I'm gonna stop you there, because I'm glad we spent this much time on this particular song and one song. Now, I maybe one day we'll let people into the world of what we discuss on our group chat, but I don't know. It's crazy. But when you send me things that are math metal, right? People know if they don't know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the super prog stuff that it's so technical and nerdy. But to me, I always tell you the same thing. It ain't got no heart, man. It's just nerd shit. And I appreciate it. It's cool. I'm a musician, so I can respect that. Damn, this guy's playing something really hard. I probably can't play it. Damn, that guitar player can play a million notes or put it together this way or whatever. And yeah, maybe it even sounds really cool. Maybe you got some insane riffs that are beyond amazing, that are phenomenal. But can you attach this level of just inner like feelings? This song pushes everything to the boundaries. Hard to understand how they compose the parts, hard to grasp it, hard to physically perform it, and then you have that emotion. So this to me sets a standard by which everything else is measured in all music that I listen to. It's why I'm such a fucking like, I guess I'm jaded. This song made me jaded. But I had to take a step back years later, and in life this took like 30 years before I really started to appreciate it. Like now I can appreciate other things and different flavors.
This is probably the most pop formatted song on the whole album.
Yep.
This is probably the most
the shortest.
Condensed, like A B. I mean, it goes to L, but still, like, there's only a few parts, but it's just so much intensity that there's nothing like it. I mean, let's just in that world of thrash, in the world of metal. I mean, like you were saying earlier, like this is something that you hear one time, and you say, "Oh, well, that's it. That's the best fucking band ever."
Yeah.
I mean, Metallica's one of those bands. Like I said, if there's a band that everyone's talking about, that's Metallica. This has to be it.
Yep.
Sure enough, it's fucking Metallica. I mean, what are the odds, But still, it's just one of those things that it's so great. And we were talking this the other day, and I guess this kind of ties in this album because whatever you determine as pinnacle, but you grew up a Metallica fan, and up until this point, well, you weren't born to this. You got this later. What was after this?
The Black Album.
The Black Album. And you remember getting the Black Album. So this entire time, this journey, you've only been heightened. Mm-hmm. They've only given you more goods.
Yeah.
And we talk about bands disappointing us, which as a child is really depressing shit.
Yeah.
And we're not going to talk about the same word, but that was a low point for our lives.
But the song "Saint Anger" is kind of cool.
I don't want to put things out that we've been.
Maybe one day we should do a proper review of Saint Anger. But look, man,
but like what I'm saying is that how great of a run this the
Absolutely.
Patriots, the whatever dynasty of sports
Tom
team you want to
Hanks,
say,
5 straight movies.
like it is just a run of like excellence. And to me, this is definitely one of the pillars, if not the mountain. And I love too about this album is that it stands, even though it's in the Metallica family, it kind of is the creative younger brother who kind of just reads too many comics and does something really great one day when you open his room and you see what project he's been working on. So he's not really the cool guy. It's not really like part of the flash and the the bright lights and the singles that they have on the other stuff. But damn, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And it was because it was kind of different, it stood on its own, and it stood, to me, I think it stands out as their best.
I mean, I agree, dude. And, you know, just to end with that Dyer's Eve thing while it was still in my thoughts were there, it's like, when I was talking about American Idiot with Eddie, we spent predominantly most of the time talking about, or at least half the time talking about the concepts of the album, the lyrics, what this thing is saying, and all that stuff. And we spent all this time talking about what this album is saying, and or what Dyer's Eve is saying, and how it married the intense magic with the feeling of emotion that, you know, especially when I was 12, 13 and I was mad and I had to move to Vegas and I left my family and this whole new world, and I'm like, I was mad at my parents. It was perfect for me at that time. And it's even better later when I started to understand what they were doing, and this song made so much sense. But, you know, that sets a standard that is hard to follow up. The only thing I could give to people who have other favorites is that the taste, you know, maybe they don't like riffs for some reason, who knows. but but with that said, my favorite piece of music that I have ever heard in life, it was in the song before that. And I started when you came in, I played it, and we listened from there, and then we went into Dyer's Eve, and that is On To Live Is To Die. From, I believe it's the 3 minutes and 35 second mark, or 4 minutes and 35 second mark. Yeah, it's 4 minutes 35-ish seconds until 7 minutes 35 seconds. So it's damn near exactly 3 minutes of my favorite composition ever. And those harmonies, that quiet thing, like that lead, that riff is my favorite riff ever. I fucking love that. And to me, that is what separates Metallica from every heavy metal band ever, is that they could bring that level of intensity, but then they have this beautiful aspect. It's why there's a lot of metal that, like, Ian shows us, and you know, I could probably mute that, but there's all this stuff that's like ugly on ugly on ugly that's metal, and I can't get into it because Metallica will give you that beauty on top of all of it and makes you sit back and go, like you said, damn, they are this dark Beethoven. They are a modern Beethoven, even though this album's 25 years old now. It's or 30 years old, actually. It's just this classical music composed in a modern time, you know, and that piece of music is just, it's honestly phenomenal. But this,
why don't you read what he says?
well, I could tell you. He says, when a man lies, he murders some part of the world. These are the pale deaths which men miscall their lives. What? Yeah. All this I cannot bear to witness any longer. Cannot the kingdom of salvation take me home? I'll be honest, I don't really know what that means.
Damn.
You want to look at it so it can
Yeah, let's look at it.
It was a poem that Cliff used to read all the time. So that's why they included it. Let's see. To live is to die lyrics. I guess these qualify as lyrics, right? When a man lies, he murders some part of the world. These are the pale deaths which men miscall their lives. All this I cannot bear to witness any longer. Cannot the kingdom of salvation take me home?
It's talking about the
Whoa.
It's talking about the Book of Revelation. The
Yeah.
pale horse
Mhm.
is one of the four horsemen. Is he's saying in this, it's the context is lying,
Mm-hmm.
and when a man lies, he's part of the end of the world,
Mm-hmm.
and he's bringing in the destruction of men, and the kingdom of salvation can't take him home because he's no longer clean, and thou shalt not lie, and whatever. But also, when you lie, I mean, a lie could be a number of things. Just cheating yourself, an actual lie. Not doing what you need to do in life could be a lie to yourself. It's just it's not a pillar of growth. It's a pillar of destruction.
And see, and this is why, to me, this album and the albums that we'll continue to talk about, this is why they have staying power in my life, because I learned something new. I don't know, I've never dissected that for some reason. Now it's easy to see. For some reason, I always thought when a man lies, I thought my whole life till just now, lying down, like physically, like when you lie in bed, not like actual lying. And when I read it just now, I'm like, oh yeah, like a lie, like being dishonest. Yeah, and so you learn something new every day, and that's an awesome interpretation right there. And yeah, so that's why I include that. What's aged the best? To me, the lyrics of Dyer's Eve, the riffage, maybe the mix hasn't quite aged as good as I had hoped for me, which usually I was like, well, that's just the voice of the album, but it's hard to listen to. I know that they could still probably have made it a little better. Probably turn things down and turn things up instead of turning everything up that they wanted. It's like, oh, I want the kick drum louder. Well, then that means something else has to lose that spot, right? But yeah, man, there's a lot.
I
So
heard
what's aged the best for you?
what's aged the best? Blackened. I think Blackened is just like always good. I think you can show that to anybody in the world, and I'm just like, yeah, that's super sick. Eye of the Beholder is like my personal favorite, but that's kind of just I feel it. I don't even know what that song's about. I don't think I've ever even listened.
But when I say what's aged the best, I'm referring more so to the general anything, not like which song aged the best, which song do you like more. I mean just in general, like as a whole thing. It could be a song that to you is better now.
Can I say what I
or what's aged the worst too?
I hate to say this though. I don't think I kind of have a personal feeling that if I heard one at the time it was released, as of hearing it now as a new person, I think it would be better interpreted at the time of the release. Maybe for whatever's going around you, maybe because it's a first of its kind. I think that now, hearing it kind of, the double bass part's super cool and awesome, but it's like, because everyone's ripped it off, it's kind of not as, whoa, which is really simple. Actually, that's probably one of their simpler little things, but it was so cool, and like, I mean, that riff is like perfect.
I'm gonna describe what you're saying.
Quintessential metal riff. That everybody's ripped off since then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody has done it.
And to I guess I'll put this to like kind of interpret it. Sean Alfreno, I'll name drop him there. He actually played the talent show with us. He played bass, and actually I haven't heard from him in years.
We pulled an Injustice for All on him.
Yeah, we did. But he said to me one day, "Whoa, that's a sick breakdown." And I'm like, Metallica doesn't play breakdowns? What? And from there, all of a sudden, every band that you would ever consider heavy has those staccato double bass halftime songs. Like every hardcore post whatever core, like it's just a standard to do that, which is what you're saying.
And metal's about that. Metal's probably the one genre that they do homages.
Yeah.
Like Lamb of God has
yeah.
Like all the bands do it because there's only so many metal riffs you can make up, and B, it's just like one of those things where let's see how you interpret that type of riff, you know. So that's what I'm saying. If you hear it now after hearing Lamb of God and a bunch of bands, and then you pull that up and let's say you've never heard it,
Yeah.
it probably is not going to hit the same way when it first was introduced. Like,
Absolutely.
holy
That's
shit,
that's
what is
why
this?
if I was a kid now, maybe I still think that song is great, but if I was a kid who had just everything from, like, let's say 2005 after in the world of metal, and then I never heard one, and then I go back and listen to that part, I'd kind of probably be like, yeah, the drums sound weird, and it's like there's no real beat, and it's really long, and oh, that's a pretty cool, pretty tame double bass part. It's cool, but it's, it's whatever. But at that time, before I heard any of this, that was like this otherworldly, like, whoa, what the fuck? That's insane. How the hell? What? That's crazy. Like, and the double bass had never been that loud before, so it was amazing. And I didn't know something like that could exist. So to me, that's still like a high point. And that song still, I'll put it on, I'm like, wow, that's so amazing. Like, how'd you do all that stuff, But I guess, after hearing you, what I'll say aged the best for me in my life, besides those lyrics of Dyer's Eve, is the balls that this band had. The fuck you attitude, the I don't care. We're going to make what we want to make. We're going to do a 9-minute 48-second song. We're going to do a 9-minute 44-second song. We're going to have a 7+ minute single. And we're going to win a Grammy for it. Like, even after everything, that doesn't happen. It still doesn't happen. Bands like that still don't get that type of recognition. They were the torchbearers. They were the people who led the way, who everyone's following behind. I think that heavy metal totally reached the pinnacle with Metallica. We could argue Ozzy, Black Sabbath, Goats, Led Zeppelin somewhere in that mix. But I think, the bands that came after, some great bands, Pantera and Slipknot, and, you mentioned Lamb of God and things like that. But this band was the heaviest with the most success, and they didn't compromise on this record. And that, to me, is just amazing. It's amazing, and it sounds great. So that's what's up with that.
And
So
aren't you proud of the people that they bought the fuck out of this record?
Oh yeah,
And that they
yeah.
got it. That they took like Master Puppets and okay, it wasn't, like I said, there wasn't as flashy hits that you got from Master Puppets. Master Puppets had some hits.
Yeah.
And then you came into this, which is a little odd man out, a little different, and Cliff just died and the whole thing, and they bought the fuck out of it and they loved it. And then that chug, and that allowed Metallica to then bridge those two worlds of Master to Black. Without and Justice for All, there would not be the Black Album. Mm-hmm. There would not be, you know what? Chugs are fucking heavy. Mm-hmm. It's still heavy, but let's do it. Let's just fucking chug.
That palm muted E string is the best sound in the planet to me.
And you went load and reload, and I know there's mixed emotions on that, but I still think they're great, and I think they went on their own different pinnacle of writing heavy popular music that could only be done with this. So this evolution of this band that consistently evolves, which if you look at bands nowadays or any days, I gotta say, my favorite bands, like a Thrice, is where every album they come out with, I get to hear a new side of them. I get to see an evolution.
Yeah.
I get to see like, oh, they're gonna try something new here. Let's see what happens.
And I'm along for the ride, and that's where I think Eddie and I, I'm surprised he actually came away with liking American Idiot, but he and I always like fight on the idea that, like, to him, once an artist puts out something new, if he really liked something by an artist, then forever that's what that artist is to him. And it could suck. Like, you could be Michael Jackson in the Jackson 5, you know, and then put out Off the Wall. And if Eddie liked Off the Wall, he's like, all right, cool, that's cool. And then Thriller comes out and he'd be like, it kind of sucks, you know. So, like, that's Eddie. Like, you have to kind of force him to listen to it and to kind of, all right, it's cool, I get it. But I like seeing a band evolve and see where they go. And if they're AC/DC or Maiden and kind of have that same sound, but they're just new songs, that's amazing. That doesn't really happen that often. But no matter what, because of what this album did for me, because of what the Black Album did for me, I'm always going to support the band. They could be 70, 80 years old, and I'm going to support and give their new stuff a chance, whether I like it or not. I have liked some of their newer stuff. I haven't loved all of it, but I have loved a good enough amount of it to add some of the songs to my favorites. But yeah, so
Before we go, because a lot of your fans are young, sell them why they should put this in right now, front to back, where they should go, what they should do with that time, how to listen to this CD for the first time ever, how to fully get the best out of it.
I mean, that's hard to say. It is a timeless record, man. It's still, you know.
They're going to remember their first time.
Yeah, that
You
is.
want that first time to be special.
That's weird to think about the idea that some people will be hearing these songs for the first time. I don't know, man.
Little motherfuckers.
Right? I honestly, I can't say, man. Just put it on and go on the journey and appreciate the riffage, man, and appreciate the fact that these guys had to physically record this shit and learn their guitars and wasn't auto-tune and all that stuff, dude. Like there's just an intensity to it. Just it's an energy.
Can we
Just
at least
listen
say,
to it.
put down, don't get on social media for a good hour.
Yeah. Yeah. Focus, you know. And a lot of the songs in here are long, so go on the journey. Don't anticipate that the chorus is coming. Just go with it. It's fucking Beethoven with distorted chugging guitars, dude. All right. So your final thoughts?
Dude, amazing album. It's part of my life, and it'll always be part of me.
I second that. This is one of those albums that is not only one of my favorites, one of the albums that shaped my life, but one that continues to shape my life, and one that is on regular rotation. It is a go-to when I need something, you know. So thanks to Metallica for that. All right, that's gonna do it. And Justice for All by Metallica. Me, Robert Ortiz, and Jordan Lee.
Later, yo.
Peace, fuckers.